Good morning, good afternoon, my second grade friends, whenever you're watching this. Today is going to be our day 2 lesson of friction, right? I know you guys watched a video with me last week and then you had a quick follow-up investigation and then you had 2 additional friction activities. But today's going to be day 2 of Miss Miller teaching you about friction, okay? So just a little review. I have the word friction up here, and I know there's a little bit of a glare, so I'm going to read it all to you guys. It says, friction is a force that slows down moving objects. And then in parentheses, something new, it says resistance, okay? So today's follow activity is going to be a little bit about resistance. And then I have 2 new labels, all right? The first one over here says high friction. So these surfaces are high in friction or have a lot of friction, high resistance. And then low friction. These surfaces are low in friction or have a little friction. So by now, we know that friction, and you could always go back to that activity I showed you, that quick little strategy when you rub your hands together really fast and you can feel the friction. By now, we know that high friction is when there's a lot of it. It's really hard to move those hands together, okay? Low friction is the opposite. It's like the boy going down the slide. It happens fast. You don't get stopped. You don't slow down, okay? Or if you do, it happens quicker, not as slow. So I have a bunch of pictures, and I'm going to sort them, which ones are high friction, which ones are low friction. You guys can shout out and make predictions with me, and then I'll tell you where they do belong, okay? So the first picture I have, I'll show you up close. It's an umbrella at the beach, and then there's a label, and it says sand, and it's pointing to the sand. So what do you think? If you were to roll a ball on sand or walk across sand, is that high friction or low friction? The answer is high friction, right? It's tough to walk across sand. It's tough to run across sand. So sand is going to be high friction. When an object touches sand, it's going to be difficult for it to move. The next one is a tile floor. So you guys might have a tile floor in your bathroom. We have them in our classrooms and school. Tile floor is, what do you think? When you make contact with the tile floor, is that going to be high friction or low friction? The answer is low friction, right? Tile floors are slippery. When we make contact with a tile floor, it's easy to walk. Next one is a slide. I think you guys already know by now. When something makes contact with a slide, that is low friction, right? You slide right on down. Sometimes it's hard to stop. Next would be desktop. So your desk in school. What do you guys think? High friction or low friction? The answer is low friction. Think about how easily things could just fall right off of your desk or roll off of your desk at school. Desks are flat, they're slippery, they have low friction. Okay, next is long grass. It looks like there's a girl running in the long grass. High friction or low friction? The answer is high friction. Right? Think about if you were like playing kickball and you kicked a ball across the grass. It doesn't go very far. Eventually it's going to slow down and stop because long grass is going to have some friction with the object. Okay? Next is a glass plate. High friction or low friction? If you put an object on a glass plate, is it just going to stop? Or is there a possibility of it slipping around? There's a possibility of the object slipping around, so that's low friction. We have a couple more. A rug, high friction or low friction? Think about when you guys sit on a rug at school. Do you like slide all over the place or you just stay put? You just stay put in one spot, so that's high friction. There's a lot of friction happening. And ice. Ice is low friction. It's very easy to slip and slide on ice. Not much is gonna slow you down or stop you. Same with the next one, a surfboard. It's gonna be low friction when you go on a surfboard. Very easy to fall or slide off. And the last one is pointing to a pillow. When you put your head on your pillow at night, does your head fall off of it or does it just stay put? Stays put, right? Because pillows are squishy, they're soft, there's high friction happening there. All right, so just take a peek. We're going to be talking a lot about high friction and low friction, or more friction, less friction today. So, boys and girls, now that we have been exposed to the difference between high friction and low friction, we're going to conduct an investigation all together, all right? I'm going to walk you guys through it, and it's going to be about finding which surfaces, just like the surfaces that we just sorted through, okay, which surfaces have the least amount of friction. We're just going to focus on low friction with today's investigation. And this is one of my favorite investigations that we do all year in 2nd grade. So I'm going to explain it to you first, and then I'm going to show you the recording sheet because we are going to take notes of our observations. So just like last week, we're going to have a ramp. I'm just using this piece of cardboard that acts like a ramp, okay? And then we have 4 different surfaces that we're going to place on top of the ramp. So the first one is a carpet. And I'm going to use a hand towel because it's just like a carpet, okay? And we'll put that on top of the ramp. The next surface is wax paper. And here's a piece of wax paper. So we'll put that one on top of the ramp when we go to use it. The next one is aluminum foil. So that will be our 3rd surface. And the last surface is tile, okay? And a whiteboard is very similar to tile floor. So we will use a whiteboard when we do that one, okay? And the objective here is to find out which of those 4 surfaces is going to have the least amount of friction with this toy car. So if we roll this toy car down, each of those 4 surfaces, which one of them has the least amount of friction. So I want you to stop and think about that first. Before you can even decide which surface has the least amount of friction, you have to remember what least amount of friction means. Low friction, right? Low friction. These surfaces are low in friction or have a little friction. That means low resistance. Some of the low resistance surfaces we had over here was the surfboard, the tile floor, your desk at school, right? Things that are going to keep the car moving. They're not going to slow it down or stop it, all right? That's what you want to think about. So 2nd graders, here's the worksheet that I'm going to use to record not only what happens, but before we find out what happens, we have to make predictions, just like we always do. So I'll write my name at the top, Miss Millerick. This is a friction lab, and it says the question or problem. Which type of material will create the least amount of friction when traveling down a ramp? So I already told you that that was the objective for today. And then you'll see the next part down says hypothesis. Okay, I didn't create this worksheet. Hypothesis is another word for prediction. So just to make things simple, I'm going to cross that out and I'm going to write prediction because that's the term that we use at the GFB. So I think it'll be a little bit easier for us to follow along. Anyways, there is a sentence starter there for us, and you guys on your own are going to fill in that sentence, okay? Miss Millerick is going to as well, but I don't want you to copy me. I want you to come up with your own ideas. So it says, predict. I think the blank will have the least amount of friction. Ooh, I'm going to stop real quick, and I'm going to highlight this. Least amount, just to remind myself that when I make my guess or my prediction, I'm guessing which one of these materials surfaces are going to have the least amount of friction with that toy car. Think about it. I want you guys to shout your answer out before I give my prediction. Okay. So I'm going to choose aluminum foil. The sentence reads, I think the aluminum foil will have the least amount of friction. And the reason why I'm choosing the aluminum foil is because aluminum foil to me is a slippery surface, and I think that when the toy car rolls down it, it's going to make it go the furthest. That means having the least amount of friction. Okay? And if you had the same prediction as me, that's great. If you had a different one, that's totally fine too. Remember, when we're making predictions, we're just trying our best. Doesn't matter if we're right or wrong. Okay? Okay, so the first surface on the recording sheet was carpet. Remember, I'm just using a hand towel. So I'm going to put the toy car on, and we will see how far it goes. Oh boy. Maybe if I give it a push. It doesn't even make it down the ramp. Look it. Oh my goodness. Didn't even make it down the ramp. So over here next to carpet, it says how far the car traveled. I'm going to write 0 feet. The car didn't even make it all the way down the ramp. That means that there was a lot of friction in between the toy car and the carpet. All right, we have a helper for trial number 2. Tess, say hello. So next is the wax paper. I'm going to put the toy car down, and we will see how it does. Let's go see. Let's go see. Tess, don't touch it. All right, so I'm going to count with my feet from the ramp. 1, 2, 3. Ooh, a little bit further than 3. We'll say 3.5 feet the toy car went. Okay, so the car was able to travel all the way down the ramp and then some. And when I used my feet, I counted about 3.5 feet. So there was less friction with the wax paper than there was with the carpet because it went a further distance. Trial number 3, aluminum foil. This is the one that Miss Miller predicted would be the least amount of friction. Let's see if I'm right or not. Ready? Ooh, looks very similar to the distance it went on the wax paper. Let's measure it. Same thing, put my feet at the end of the ramp. 1, 2, 3. I don't know, what do you guys think? Would you count that as 4? 4 feet? I think we can round up and say 4 feet. All right, so coming back to the recording sheet, the aluminum foil, how far the car traveled on it, I wrote 4 feet. So the aluminum foil surface had even lower friction than the wax paper surface. We have one more though, right? We can't say if that prediction was correct or not because we have to test out all 4 of the surfaces. So last is the tile. Okay, here we go. Last one, tile. I'm using a whiteboard because it's very, very similar to the material that a tile is. Ready? Let's go measure that out. 1, 2, 3. Oh, 3.5, just like the wax paper. All right, so for the tile, I'm going to write 3.5 feet. That's how far the car went after it hit the tile. So, which one had the least amount of friction? Miss Miller was correct. The aluminum foil. It went the furthest with the aluminum foil. And then the last part, you go down, conclusion, was your hypothesis correct or incorrect? And remember, hypothesis just means prediction. I'll cross it out and write prediction. And I'm going to write correct or circle correct because my prediction was correct. And then it says, why do you think this happened? Explain. And then at the bottom, you would write a sentence or two about why you think the car went the fastest on whichever material it went the fastest on. So for me, it went the fastest on the furthest on the aluminum foil. And I think that because the aluminum foil is a slippery surface, it's like a slide. I think that the wheels of the toy car just slid right down that aluminum foil and it sped it up even more. okay? And if you guys want, I will link this worksheet onto the follow-up activity page, and you can test this out on your own. You can even switch up these materials. You don't have to use them, because just because this is what happened with Miss Millerick's investigation doesn't mean you're going to have the same exact information. You might see different observations. Maybe your toy car goes further on a different surface. You don't even have to use a toy car. You can use a ball if you want, whatever you have in your house. Okay, so I will link this worksheet and you can record your information that you learn as well. Okay.